I'm a very strong person for free speech. But 97, 94, 95, 96% of the people are against me in the sense of the newscasts are against me. When somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech.
Hi again, everybody. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. You can't have it both ways. Free speech doesn't mean you can pick and choose just the speech that you like. It means all speech is protected. And not just is it protected, but the fact that it is outlined in the Constitution's very First Amendment speaks to how important it was to our founders. No matter how loud Donald Trump likes to blurt that expression, quote, I'm a very strong free speech person, his actions tell a different story, as well as the actions of those in his administration. The latest infringement comes from the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth restricting what journalists there who cover the Defense Department can report on, going very much against that key pillar of the First Amendment. We have just passed a 5 p.m. deadline for the Pentagon press corps to sign on to a policy Pete Hegseth's Pentagon put forward, which the New York Times reports this way, quote, the 21-page Pentagon document lays out a number of requirements at odds with freedom of press protections, according to lawyers representing news organizations. One is a provision stating that journalists could be deemed a, quote, security risk based on several considerations, including whether they disclose classified or even unclassified information without the Pentagon's authorization. Media lawyers worry that the stricture could expose reporters to punishment for engaging in routine reporting. Among those not signing on to the Pentagon's new policy, pretty much all of them. Every news outlet, including MSNBC, The Washington Post, The New York Times, The Associated Press, importantly Newsmax, and many others have all come forward saying they will not approve of this violation of the First Amendment. Even Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's own former employer, Fox News, is saying it does not agree with the new Pentagon policy. One America News is the only outlet who has signed on. In a statement, the Pentagon Press Association said this, quote, this Wednesday, most Pentagon Press Association members seem likely to hand over their badges rather than acknowledge a policy that gags Pentagon employees and threatens retaliation against reporters who seek out information that has not been pre-approved for release. Our members did nothing to create this disturbing situation. It arises from an entirely one-sided move by Pentagon officials, apparently intent upon cutting the American public off from information they do not control and pre-approve. What will be lost will be answers to vital questions about what the Department of Defense is doing on a daily basis. Things like the latest strike of another boat accused of allegedly carrying drugs in waters off Venezuela and killing 6 people on board. As for how this pushback is playing among the leadership at the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth responded to multiple agency statements with an emoji of a hand waving. I guess that's leadership for him. This infringement on a cornerstone of American democracy, the freedom of the press, something that MAGA folks used to talk about a whole lot, is just one example of what Ann Applebaum writes about today in The Atlantic, how America's beacon of democracy is going dark. Quote, Trump's own attacks on radical left judges and fake news media now travel the world much faster than we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal did. Trump's attacks on the press and the First Amendment is where we begin the hour with some of our most favorite experts and friends. Staff writer for The Atlantic and author of Autocracy, Inc., Ann Applebaum is back. Plus, president of Media Matters for America, Angelo Carasone, joins us as well. And joining me at the table again, the reporter who flagged this story for us yesterday, Oliver Darcy. He's the author of the newsletter Status, which covers all things media. You brought this deadline to our attention yesterday and the fact that no one had signed on, including Fox. There are not a lot of examples of everyone standing together, but I think the other side of that coin is there are not a lot of examples of something so egregious that the North Koreans would blush and say, you know, give me back my press guideline. How do you see this story?
Yeah, I see it exactly as how you laid it out there. It's like Pete Hegseth wants these reporters to be North Korean-style propagandists where they go on the air and they only repeat government talking points. They parrot what the government is telling them is okay to say, and they're not permitted to do anything else. They are basically saying the act of reporting, the act of getting the real story behind the scenes is a criminal act. And they're asking reporters to acknowledge that, to sign a document acknowledging that. Obviously, no news organization is going to go along with this. And so basically every single news organization has, including Fox News, has said, no, thank you, Pete Hegseth. We'll just leave the Pentagon. And so what he's really doing is expelling the press from the Pentagon. And I just cannot stress how hypocritical this is, coming from a man who talked about how liberals want safe spaces because they're so emotional and they can't stand scrutiny. And here he is constructing a massive safe space around the Pentagon.
Well, and I mean, let's deal with Pete Hegseth's emotions first. I mean, he's been described by his own former insiders, who he seems to purge on a near monthly basis, as paranoid. Is that part of it? Is part of this him? He
seems very paranoid about leaks, and I think that's what it comes down to. This is like paranoia has gripped him, and he is now just trying to cut leaks out. But he apparently has, he worked at Fox News, so you'd think he'd have a little understanding of how the media operates. But he apparently thinks that reporters are just roaming the Pentagon, walking into meetings with generals and getting information. Any reporter will tell you that's not how things happen. That's not how you actually get reporting. In fact, I would argue it was beneficial for him to have reporters there because at least they would interface with the official government spokespeople. Now they're going to be outside the Pentagon, still texting their sources, still communicating with sources, and they've, he's lost the ability to actually influence the reporting via the official Pentagon spokespeople. So I think it's going to backfire.
Let me ask you one more thing. Their statement seems to lump together coverage of classified information and unclassified information. Now, there are laws governing the treatment of classified information, and presidents of different parties have sort of made different choices about that. But coverage of unclassified information that's simply germane to the Pentagon or the Department of Defense, there's no law that restricts that coverage. Are they looking at new laws?
I don't know what they're doing. I can tell you they are saying it's illegal, just to show you, for readers to understand, our audience to understand how far-reaching this is. They're saying now it's illegal if a reporter to walk into the Pentagon, take a picture anywhere on the reservation. They claim that is illegal. If you were to go to the Pentagon as a reporter, not take a picture, but later come up with a sketch of what you saw, that is not permitted under these rules. These rules are just so absurd on their face that no news organization can sign it. And that's why even Newsmax, that's why Fox News, they've all said no to this. Pete Hegseth is just way out of his league here.
And Applebaum, we've talked at different points about how Trump is moving faster than Orban did. I don't know that Orban ever got to this point where it was in writing. Maybe it is now. But just weigh in on how clunky and public this effort is.
What worries me about this story, and it may soon apply to other institutions as well, is that I fear the purpose was to expel news organizations. So the point was that only One American News has access. Only they are able to speak to official sources. Everybody else has to turn to them for information when they do need information from official sources. And a whole host of reporters and experts and other people who are responsible for reporting on what is an institution that belongs to all Americans. So our taxes pay for the Pentagon. The generals are our generals, and military actions are our actions done in our name. And it looks to me like the point is to restrict the ability to talk about it and to have any official versions of it to people who are ideologically approved. And that's something that actually is, it took many years before when you look at other democracies that lapsed into something more autocratic, usually it takes a long time before there's only one official news outlet that's allowed to produce the news, which is that's a kind of Soviet situation. And this is a very, very fast way to get rid of everybody, even Fox.
One of the things that is sort of echoing in my ears are the warnings of the generals ahead of the November election, not just General Kelly, but General Mattis, General Milley. This feels like it represents a lot of risk for the men and women of the military as well, that if they don't have any ability for the things being asked of them to be known by the public, to be known by their neighbors, it weakens that relationship between the civilian population and a military population. Does that feel like part of the intended or unintended consequences here, Ann?
I mean, intended or unintended, it cuts the Pentagon, it cuts the military off from, as I said, the people who pay for it and in whose name it acts. All of those generals, all the people you've just mentioned, are all people who worked very closely with President Trump in his first term and were very clear about the direction that he was going. And they were particularly concerned about exactly this, that he could take the military in a direction that's unfamiliar to most of us. And now we have to take into consideration the possibility that they're taking it into a direction not only that's new and dangerous, but we don't even know what it is.